Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be reviewing the Object 430U, which is a new Tier 10 Russian medium tank, coming with a 9.22. Now this is on the test server. Some stats may change, but most of what you see here should be kind of the final version of the Object 430U. Now, unlike other Tier 10 Russian medium tanks, this has slightly higher alpha here. If I can get down here, we have 440, for the damage per shot on the AP and the heat. Much like other Russians, it has heat for the premium round. Now, when it comes to the gun, it does have a little bit less accuracy than other Russian mediums. What it kind of lacks in as far as accuracy and also a little bit of DPM, it kind of makes up for it in armor. The armor on this thing is pretty ridiculous. It has the same gun depression as other Russian mediums, except for the 140 that has an extra degree of gun depression. So you still, you struggle a little bit with, say, hiding your lower plate like they do, but the overall armor is probably closest to the Object 907, the Clan War reward tank that a lot of people have a tough time facing, given that it can side scrape and angle pretty well on that tank. I'm going to try my best fighting here, but playing on the test server, I get some packet loss, and also the ping isn't all that great either. But more or less, this tank, it's going to be pretty good at kind of reverse side scraping, so coming around a corner, kind of backing up, just angling out your side armor. In this scenario, though, it's going to be a little difficult given that people can kind of drive and hit me from the side. And also the ping is so bad here that it's kind of delayed reaction. In the grand scheme of things, though, this is definitely one of the slower Russian mediums. It has the 440 damage gun, which it hits hardest out of the tier 10s. And the penetration, it is a little bit lacking unless you shoot heat, but for a medium, it's kind of to be expected at tier 10. Alright, this is going to be hard here because they have quite a few tanks here and all of them have a lot of armor. It's about like a half second from when I stop. Crap, I shot him too high. Now, the reason I say it's close to the 907's armor is they're not the same. The 430U here definitely has a little bit more of a, it's kind of flat. The front plate flat on the upper and lower, and the sides are flat as well as far as what they appear. I'll get more into that though, because it is angled like the 907. It's just from first glance they do appear to be somewhat flat in nature. But most things will just kind of bounce off of you unless they hit you in the lower plate when it's not angled, or they kind of hit you in the side, stuff like that. But having 440 damage per shot is pretty nice for a Russian medium, to where usually, you're kind of lacking a little bit of alpha. This thing will sting a bit. It does do more damage than some tier 10 heavies, when it comes to damage per shot. Being a little bit careful because, a couple of their tanks do have pretty good heat rounds that it's the test server, so most likely they're using. And also, whenever I try to reverse side scrape with the little bit of lag I have, it's a little bit difficult getting the angle and correct. I'm gonna see if I can bounce, keep bouncing here. So far I've bounced 2,700 damage. Now when it comes to hatches, the hatches are pretty tough on the Object 430U here. I wouldn't consider them true weak spots. Premium rounds or like tier 10 TDs can penetrate the hatches, but for the most part they are tough. I will go over like more specifics when it comes to the armor after this, when I compare this tank to the other Russian mediums. Almost tempted to chuck an HE round, not that I brought one, so it's just as far as hitting things, the accuracy is pretty low in this. It's not like laser accurate like other oh god, he pushed right out there. And it's not laser accurate like other Russian medium tanks. You know, you do have a little bit of accuracy loss given your overall damage per shot. It's gonna bounce him again. Go. I set him on fire. Ah, that's not your fault, dude. It's actually a-okay. I'd rather get shot by him than several. So yeah, that guy's, he's angling to where this does have a little bit of space armor. Basically the side hull that looks like it's somewhat flat, that's entirely spaced armor, to where when I say the side armor looks flat, unlike the 907s, it's because that space armor appears to be the side hull, where, you know, it's really not. I was hoping he'd miss, and I was hoping I can actually get out of here. I don't have much HP. We're definitely going to lose this, but this tank, though, you know, if you like blocking damage, it's definitely going to be great at that. Really, the main problem you're going to have is a little bit of accuracy woes. A little bit of mobility to where it's not as fast as, say, a T62A, stuff like that. But overall, it's probably, you know, as far as the tech tree tanks for Russia tanks go, it's basically the sturdiest tier 10 Russian medium when it comes to being in the tech tree. The 907 does have some advantages, like the side armor is a little bit better at side scraping than the Object 430U here, but they are comparable enough to where I would consider them, you know, within a decent margin of each other. Alright, I'm gonna see if I can rush in here in time. I'm probably a little bit too late. I'm gonna get whacked by that guy there. Holy crap, he actually bounced. No, he got me. Oh, I was like a split second. I was holding the fire there. It just didn't reload in time, or else I would have got him. But for most Russian mediums, like bouncing that, that was an Object 268 version 4, another new tank in 9.22. I think I bounced off the upper glacis. It probably would have penned, say, like a Object 140, or T62A, excuse me. So even though we lost this, you know, I deflected over 5,000 damage, you know, did about 2,700 damage, to where it's basically like a little pocket heavy tank, the Object 430U. So a decent amount of damage here, but as far as deflecting, over 5k, and basically every single one of those was a premium round, whereas on the live server you won't see that. So getting into comparing tanks here, like before I get into that, looking at the tank, you know, upper and lower glacis are flat, where, you know, it leads heavily to angling this, to where if you want to improve this frontal armor. One thing of note is kind of in between, you know, both the upper and side hull here. Basically it cuts off, and this is all side hull armor behind this. You'll notice that it's kind of hard to see on a live view here, but basically it's flat, basically down to here. The side hull is flat, but basically from there up it's angled in to the center of the tank, kind of like the 907, to where when you're side scraping, and this is covered with space armor, as long as you're keeping this at kind of like an auto bounce angle and very heavily angled, really the only spot people can pen you is a very small area here, to where it's not as angled, and, you know, basically the closest point to them. And even then it's still pretty tough, to where they're going to be bouncing off of, you know, especially with heat, because this is spaced armor, the heavily angled section. And if you keep the side hull, you know, which is still 90 millimeters thick on the bottom here, they're going to be bouncing off of that, as long as you don't drop it below auto bounce. But getting into the comparison here, I have the Object 430U that I just played, Object 907, the Premium Clan Wars reward, T62A, and the 140. As you can see, 440 damage per shot, 120 more than other Russian mediums at this tier. However, penetration 252 for the standard round. Once you get into heat, 340, and then going to something like T62A, you have 330, so it's a little bit better there. Object 140, you know, they have the same rounds, and also the 907, 330. So you lose basically 12 penetration, or 12 millimeters of penetration on your standard round, but you gain 10 on the premium. So the rate of fire here, you know, given that this has a different damage per shot, dropping down here to DPM, you start at 2,700, and this is all with 100% cruise in this comparison. No brothers in arms, no equipment on it, no camouflage added to the tank in this comparison either. As you can see here, I took everything off of the tanks to compare them. So 2700 DPM, that's, you know, definitely worse than all the other Russian tier 10 medium tanks that sit over 3000 for the base value. So while you do have, you know, an extra 120 damage per shot, you do lose a lot of DPM. So that's why it plays more as like a pocket heavy tank, and you're definitely going to have to bounce rounds. Given the armor is very good on this, so you can do it, you're gonna have to bounce rounds to make up that DPM differences when you're fighting other mediums. Now, gun depression -5, same as other Russian mediums, except for the 140 that has an extra 1 degree. Turret does traverse a little bit slow, to where again it plays like a slower medium, you know, more towards a heavy, given the armor and the slower turret traverse and stuff like that. Accuracy 0.38, worst out of the tier 10 mediums. Aiming time, though, you know, also a little bit worse, but 2.21 isn't that bad, given, you know, you can improve that with some crew skills. HP 2000, you know, better than the T62A, 140, tied with the 907. As far as armor values go, you know, between the T62A and 140, the Object 430 is much better than them. It's very comparable to an Object 907. I would say the 430, a little bit better on the front. As far as like the 907, it has a bunch of different armor values across the front of the tank. If someone knows where to actually shoot you frontally, they're going to be able to pen you. Whereas the 430, given that the upper plate is pretty damn strong and the lower plate, you know, it's weak to where you can potentially just angle that a little bit harder to damage the 430U frontally, in my opinion. Going down to mobility, though, you can see it has the worst like raw value. When you go to top speed, 50 kilometers an hour, tied with the T62A, so it's not exactly the fastest out of this bunch. Specific power, though, is the lowest at 14.29. So 907, T62A, 140 are much better. As far as concealment, which also the traverse rate is a little bit slower too, which is why it feels a little bit sluggish. Concealment, it does have the best camouflage, surprisingly. And, you know, they're not that big of a difference between, you know, the 907, T62A, and 140, but it does have the best camouflage somehow. I wouldn't have guessed that. Same view range, though. Signal range, you know, a little bit low compared to 907 T62A, but they don't matter that much. Going into the armor, though, I'm going to try to hop into another battle here as well. You know, starting off the lower plate here, it's all, you know, one armor thickness, 105 millimeters, 55 degree angle, so it's 183 millimeters effective, you know, to where that's not terribly strong, to where things can penetrate you there if you don't angle your tank. Your upper plate, you know, 320 millimeters effective. Only tier 10 TDs or premium rounds are going to be able to really touch your upper plate if it's not angled. Looking at your turret front, you know, it is comparable to other Russian mediums at tier 10, to where, you know, it doesn't really have a huge mantlet, but it is pretty tough to actually pen it given its size and strength. Some premium rounds can kind of punch through. Basically, if you draw a little box here, it's not very heavily angled here. About 300 millimeters effective in some spots, you know, a little bit stronger as you get more towards out here to where it goes to like 320, a little bit higher than that. So premium rounds can kind of punch through the front here, but the Russian mediums kind of share that across all the tier 10s. The hatches though, you'll notice that they are very small. This one's covered by kind of a machine gun to where people might actually shoot a little bit higher and miss the hatch completely. The right one, basically, you know, it's around 300 millimeters effective. It drops a little bit lower in a couple very teeny tiny spots like 291, but overall you can see the size of this hatch. It's basically not worth shooting, given that you might hit the roof and stuff like that. The other hatch is a slightly stronger, 320 millimeters effective and up, so it's not even worth shooting this side. As far as being able to like overmatch the roof potentially, you can't really do that. The weakest it is basically right near the cupolas towards the back, and that's only 55 millimeters thick, so you're not really going to be able to overmatch that very well. However, there is a possibility if you are facing this tank and shooting down at it, say it's like face hugging you and stuff like that, or you're just struggling and you want to throw HE, basically the deck of this tank is only 30 millimeters thick, so leading until they change overmatch, or even if they ever do, you just need a 90 millimeter plus cannon to be able to overmatch the deck area. So that is a possibility. If you get up close to this tank, just basically fire down into here and you'll be able to penetrate it. Now the side, getting back to the side, to where much like the 907, which I probably could inspect it here just to see if I can show that. So the 907, you'll see that the front hole isn't really flat, it's kind of rounded, to where the problem that a lot of people face fighting 907s is they'll kind of peek out, you know, side scraping like this, and given that the side armor is very heavily angled in, a lot of it's auto bounce and you'll just ricochet off of it, or you simply can't penetrate it. They can even kind of reverse side scrape too, but that's a little bit more difficult. Getting back to the Object 430U, where as your lower glacis, excuse me, is a little bit weak at 183 millimeters effective. You can angle this pretty heavily to where they can't penetrate this, given the angle of it, and it's covered in spaced armor. So it's basically like a black hole, like the IS-7s. To where when you kind of angle it, it's just take this could be off, but just visually seeing this tank pop around a corner at you like this, you're not going to be able to penetrate it across here. Turret's going to be really hard. Lower plate is going to be angled where you can't pen that very well, nor the upper glacis, to where your best chance is just this really small sliver here, specifically like right here, that's the least angled bit at you, to where that's your best chance to pen this thing. So very similar to the 907s. Let me pop into another battle here and see if I can, my second battle here, I'm just going to try to rush out, see how much damage I can block, given that this tank, you know, even though it's a medium tank, it's kind of more geared towards deflecting shots, you know, 440 damage gun, rather than kind of zipping around with a 320 damage gun like the other Russian mediums. Alright, so we got a city map. Lots of premium rounds going to be thrown out here as well. Let's move me to the other side. But in the grand scheme of things, is this a good tank? I think, you know, it's a good addition to the game because, you know, it is different than the T-62A and Object 140. They still have another tier 10 Russian medium they're adding in, which is going to be a rear mounted tank. So you'll get even, basically you're going to have a pretty good selection when it comes to Russian mediums now. This one is probably going to be the most versatile if you want to block damage, given that the turret is, you know, slightly towards the front, but basically it has a standard turret setup. The other Russian medium that's coming after, I believe, the Object 430 version 2, that's going to be rear mounted, to where you're not going to have that luxury of having, you know, kind of a standard turret placement. Even though the gun depression is only 5 degrees, so you can't fight over hills very well, it is enough to where you can fight over like little bumps and stuff like that and try to hide your lower plate. So this tank will perform pretty well. The accuracy does hold it back a little bit, and losing that 12 millimeters of pen on the standard round will hold it back a little bit too. But basically you have a teeny tiny heavy tank in a box, basically, to where it's going to be pretty fun to play. It's going to be very hard to actually deal with one of these if it's set up properly and you're able to bounce rounds. That guy actually just angled his hole, or not hole, he angled his turret and got whacked. So in the grand scheme of things, this will lose out if basically you're in like brawling people, you're out of cover, and they're able to hit your lower glacis or like flank you and they're not shooting your space armor. You will get out DPM'd in this, given that your DPM is lower than other tier 10 mediums, you know, barring like say autoloaders and stuff. To where you do have to play this a little bit differently. You play it, you know, a little bit more cautious, but knowing that if you can get in a good spot to abuse your armor, I'm going to try to get myself in this little ditch, granted there's Artie. If you can get yourself in a spot to abuse your armor, nothing's going to be able to touch you unless they're really lucky and can spam a premium round through your turret in the right spot. Which I would like to hit this bat chat. Oh crap, I just shot my own guy. That's all my fault. I can't even blame that on the ping. Luckily, he's in the 430U and I hit him on the... Crap, I actually just hit him in the side space armor there. So, not my best showing here, but basically this tank, it's going to be a fun tank to play. You got lots of armor for a medium tank. The gun at 440 alpha hits really hard for a medium tank, whereas you do lose accuracy and DPM, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter too much. To where if you like yourself a medium with a little bit more armor to it and can kind of swallow losing a little bit of damage potential as far as raw DPM and accuracy, and also a little bit of mobility, you're going to like this tank. It plays very similar to the 430 that got moved down to a tier 9. It's just, you know, definitely taken up to a slightly better level than the former Object 430 was before this patch. Okie dokie, I probably should have shot this guy, but I completely spaced here. Oh lord. I don't know. I'm gonna... Like, I don't know how I'm gonna help you here. Crap. I shot him with an AP round. But for anyone looking to get this tank, I know quite a few of you who watch my live streams regularly are excited for it. You know, you're not going to be disappointed. It's probably going to be the easiest of the Russian mediums to play for most people, given that it does have good armor and it has a little bit more punch to the gun. However, if you do get yourself into trouble or in the wrong position, to where people, you know, they have higher DPM and they're just going to flank you or something, it will show some flaws there. But more or less, just don't get shot in the lower plate without angling it, and don't angle too much or get flanked, and you're gonna deflect a ton of damage coming your way in this tank. But you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. As far as, like, I think it'll work well in public battles. When it comes to like competitive play, given the slightly low DPM and accuracy, I don't know how well it would be used there, but then again, I'm not a very good source of that since I don't play like Clan Wars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video though, and hopefully you're excited for the Object 430U. Like, looking at the tech tree now, you know, you're still going to be able, everything as far as the T62A, 140, and the 430U come off of the T44, whereas, you know, getting the other tech line, once they introduce the new tier 10, you know, you're going to have to go through the other branch. They did switch kind of the changeovers and stuff a little bit to where, you know, if you're on the A44, you have to go all the way to that, and that's the only tier 10 medium you're going to be able to get. Whereas going through the T3485, you're able to get all of the other three. The tech tree does look a little bit weird. I'm hoping that they kind of, you know, put them all on one line as far as tier 10s go. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of a review of the Object 430U. It's going to be a fun tank, and it is going to be coming out soon, given that, you know, with 9.22 on the test here, should be about 2 weeks before we see it, maybe 3 on a live server. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Have a very nice day. See you around.